Hello everybody. Today on cars which are actually just about still in production and yet you've already forgot about them, I give you the 5th generation Toyota Supra. The car that we were all desperately excited to see, the return of an iconic nameplate after over a decade and a half away, and yet as soon as it landed we were very keen to forget, because it turned out that what we were given was effectively a Z4 coupe. And on a number of occasions I have now sampled the Supra, and each time come away frustrated, like so many, that Toyota came so close to greatness and yet still was so far. However, on each occasion there has been one element of the Supra about which there is no doubt whatsoever: the might of its engine. The BMW built, although allegedly with much input from Toyota, B58, a 3-litre straight-six with a twin-scroll turbocharger and far more power than Toyota ever claimed. It is absolutely fantastic. And though Toyota did offer the car with the 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo of the day, the B48, I could never understand why anybody would actually ever buy one. But it turns out that at least one person did. His name is Ian, this is his car, and today I am revisiting the Supra, asking if I was a little bit too harsh on it, and if there is something to be said for it in lesser specification. Okay then, just to bring us all up to speed, what is it we're dealing with today? This is the 5th generation of Toyota's iconic Supra, a sports car dating back decades now, which last saw service in the late 1990s with the 4th generation A80 Supra. That's the very rounded, fast and furious one, which went out of production in 2002. And naturally, we were all excited for its return, but spirits were understandably dampened when we learned it was to be a collaboration between Toyota and BMW, with not just a little bit of parts sharing going on, but a lot. To the extent that not only is this car built on the same platform as BMW's then new Z4, it also uses the same engines and is even constructed in the same factory. But to add insult to injury, though the interior was chiefly liberated from the BMW parts bin, and that's actually fine because it's a good bin to loot, they were forced to use the older version of BMW's iDrive, which is still very good indeed, but by the time this car came out was already a little bit old. It also didn't help that because this car was built on that shared platform, when you looked at it and compared it with the concept car that essentially previewed the styling, you realised that the proportions had changed. The car had become a little narrower and therefore visually a little taller, and it lost a key bit of that aggression, meaning that to my eyes initially it just didn't look quite right. However, I will confess that years later, seeing it arrive today in this resplendent yellow, I've got to say, it is rather beginning to grow on me. And apparently Ian says he has never had another car that gets as much attention as this. Now, I know you have some very important questions to ask. The first of which, and I'm sure most important, is, James, what on earth are you doing looking like you've just come back from a particularly dull conference at the NEC, where you've no doubt been discussing your company's new strategy? Well, no, I haven't been sneakily hiding a day job from all of you. Instead, I have a Tesla press car on the driveway. And this is how I was handed the key. Because I didn't want to be recognised driving a Tesla, I also decided to put on a fairly plain shirt. And other things you'll likely also want to know will be, why did Ian go for the 2-litre when, if you check the classifieds, you'll see that the 3-litre can be had for more or less the same money? Well, that's fairly simple and easy to answer. You see, previous to this, he had a Subaru BRZ, and he was very, very happy with it. It replaced a Golf GTI, and although it wasn't as fast as the Golf, it was a lot more fun. So he was keenly waiting for the new generation of BRZ to arrive, but he then found out that here in Britain we weren't to get the second generation BRZ, instead receiving only its Toyota sibling, the GR86, which, as it turns out, I've also driven and is a brilliant car. But at the time, 2022, he was waiting for it to be announced, and the Toyota website simply said, helpfully, coming soon. So, while he was waiting for soon, he started playing around on the configurator for the Supra and saw that they were doing some rather tempting finance offers. And he realised he'd been a fool, because he was looking at 3 or 4 year deals, and then realised if he clicked the button for a 2-year deal, they were doing 0% interest, which meant that if he were to put down the money that he already had in his BRZ, he could actually have this for the same amount of money a month, provided he went with the 2-litre, which also was available only in Pro specification. So you've got plenty of nice features in here, heated seats, cruise control, all that sort of stuff, though not electric adjustment or, naturally, memory, heads-up display, and it's missing a few other things too. But overall, it's fine. It does the business. It's got everything you need and nothing really that you don't. However, perhaps more importantly, because he does actually use and drive his car, he wanted something that was a little more economical. And this, on a run, will comfortably do over 40 to the gallon. And he really has driven this car. In the 2 and a bit years he's had it now, he's put on just shy of 26,000 miles. And happily, in that time, despite it being built by BMW, it's been as reliable as a Toyota. It has not had one single issue. And I am a little bit jealous about that, I'll be honest. It would be nice to have one car that doesn't require consistent maintenance. He has enjoyed it so much that when his finance did come to an end earlier in this year, he then bought the car outright, and so is now very happy to call this his Supra. 2 years on, it still puts a smile on his face, and it does for him absolutely everything that he would need. So, if after today's video you head towards the classifieds in search of your dream Toyota, be it a Supra or a Sierra, don't forget to use CarVertical, the super-powered super search that cross-references a number of databases from around the globe to give you all the information you want to know on any potential used car purchase, including accident history, potential mileage discrepancies, usage as a taxi, involvement in fire or theft, and all of this you can get in just 60 seconds with only a VIN or a registration number. Even better, for 20% off the service, don't forget to use my discount code JAYEMM. Naturally, many of my comments and criticisms of the previous video will remain valid. I don't think it looks quite as good as it should, but I do think it has improved in my eyes. The boot is still a little awkward to get into, as is the rest of the car. This door aperture is not anywhere near as generous as it might appear, though knowing this I did manage to get in it today without bashing my head. The bonnet is impossibly high, so you feel like you're in a car that's much larger than it is. And compared to, say, a Cayman or something like that, visibility out is it's quite compromised. These cars, the 2 litres, also don't, for whatever reason, have the parking sensors of the 3 litre, but they do at least have a reversing camera. And to be honest, that makes the rear absolutely fine, but that front, though you can see a lot of bonnet, you know you can't see all of it. So I would appreciate parking sensors, but you know what, he does say you do get used to it, and if it's your one and only car, I'm sure you would. At normal speeds with the car in comfort, it's a little bit bouncy through some of these more demanding sections here. I'm only doing 40 mile an hour now because I'm following a couple of other cars. The steering has a reasonable weighting to it. It's not particularly communicative or feelsome, but it does a nice job. It is reasonably speedy. Whether it's different between the 2 and the 3 litre, I couldn't tell you, but that may become very apparent when I do put my foot down. Road noise is pretty decent, doesn't seem to be all that intrusive. The gearbox is excellent too, the classic ZF 8-speed, and if you did want a Supra with a manual, Toyota did eventually introduce one, but for the 3 litre only. Honestly though, this ZF was always such a good box, I actually never really particularly felt the loss of a manual, and I think Toyota were very wary of the fact they knew these were going to be modified, and the Autobox was always going to be able to cope with a lot more power and torque. And on that note, this 2-litre 4-cylinder B48, effectively a cut-down version of the B58 6-cylinder, makes 255 horsepower and 295 pounds-feet of torque. That's 400 Newton-meters. So, all well and good then. But if you wanted a car to just cruise up and down the motorway, you could get a Corolla. You buy a Supra because every now and again you want to have fun. So, what's this one like? Let's put it into sport mode, put the gearbox into manual, and find out. You know what? Despite the fact that on paper it may be a little lacking, and when you put your foot down it certainly doesn't have even close to the firepower of the 3-litre, for a road like this, the car has more than enough, particularly as there was a burst of rain just before I put the cameras on the car, and now the road is wet. I'm actually grateful that it isn't overburdened with masses and masses of torque. The road though does seem to have quite a bit of wildlife on it. Thus far today, 2 squirrels and 1 pigeon have both seen their life flash before their eyes. I would say this car feels a touch laggier than the B58, but that could simply be the fact that car just has a lot more to give all the time. Right, patent pending 3-point turn hill start torture test. How are we doing? Visibility's not cracking. We've got hill hold. Thank you very much for letting me out, madam. Actually, no, take that back. The visibility out the back is sort of okay. It's a little compromised, but to the side, all right, that side, it's good. That side, not so much. I have put the car into its sport traction mode, but even so, it seems to have absolutely no trouble whatsoever finding the grip. That rear end has remained planted, which I suppose it should with 275 wide boots on it. The fronts are 255s, and they are now all-round Falcons in place of the factory fit Michelin Pilot Super Sport. Those apparently became very, very sketchy as they aged, and that's one of the many reasons that Ian decided to change them. He also, at the same time, changed the wheels. They're from a company called Two Forged, and I've got to say, they look fantastic, to the point that I was fairly convinced they were a Toyota option when I saw them. Seeing 18s on a car like this too, I think, actually does make it look that little bit better. I like seeing a good bit of sidewall on a tyre, and it's likely contributing to the fact that when you do press on, the ride quality is actually pretty good. I've got the dampers in normal, everything else in sport, but honestly, it doesn't really feel like it's made a massive difference. The gearbox can be a touch slow on the downshift, but it's really not that bad. Upshifts, they're fine. Doesn't have a snap or a bite to it, but you know what? Get into the groove with this thing, you can make good progress. My only real criticism is I do want to rev the thing out a little bit more, but the red line is set at just 6,200 RPM. Nevertheless though, I'm having a good time in this. Sure, if you went to Santa Pod, it's likely going to disappoint. Although Ian did say that he watched a CarWow drag race where they had this, the 3-litre, and an old 4th gen, and off the line in the wet, this was actually the quickest, simply because it didn't have too much power to try and put down. Makes a pleasant enough noise too, though I know most of it is probably artificial, and it's a decent place to be. This interior is nice. You're reminded constantly by the view of that bonnet, those side arches, that you are in something quite special. Although I do have to make a correction to my earlier review of the car, in that I said that all of these fake vents over the car, which nobody ever liked, could actually be opened up and did have a purpose, because this is what we were told back in the day. This is not true. Have a look at where some of those vents are, and it's very clear this is not true. And I feel a bit silly about that, but it's also important to correct that and say, yeah, don't know quite why they did that, but they did, and it is what it is. In fact, from in here, just about the only thing I'm not really a fan of is this little GR logo that Ian's installed down here. Behind it is simply just a blank plate. There's nothing really there, and he wanted to just put something nice there. He looked at buying a badge as you would get on the back of the car, but they were too big, so he printed this off and fitted it, and it just looks, well, it's offset, doesn't look quite right, and you can see the edges where he's had to cut it. So that I don't like, but I know it also would come off very, very easily. I also love the nice, simple, very compact dash, which tells you everything that you need to know. You've got plenty of buttons in here for all of your important functions, and honestly, having just come out of a Tesla, I am reminded of why there is a lot to be said for this way of doing things. Pulling away from a stop, the car's got nice, decent road manners. It's very smooth, very nice, very intuitive. It's an easy car to drive. Easier, apparently, than a Nissan Micra, which is so big it can't fit on its side of the road. And oh look, this Range Rover's got out of my way just ahead of the roller coaster, my most demanding piece of test road. And as we hear, let's give the Supra a proper workout, shall we? And you know what? I have taken an awful lot of cars down that piece of road. It is the undoing of a great many of them. But I think this might be just about one of the best behaved I've ever encountered. It's incredible. It took all of the lumps and bumps in its stride, did not deviate from its course. Very, very impressed. I did not expect that. Is the suspension calibrated differently to the 3 litre? Well, possibly. I suppose it must be to compensate for the loss of the weight over the front axle. All in, the saving over a 3 litre isn't really going to be all that much. But still, it is a hair lighter. The wheels certainly will be contributing. Incidentally, I don't know how you have a semi-forged wheel. Surely it's forged or it's not. Oh, TR4, 5, not sure, pass. Triumph. Yeah, this is a lot of fun, this. And here's the thing, right? I drove the Supra and came out of it last time going, what have you done, Toyota? What have you done? And many of my comments I stand by. But, like Ian, a little while after this car had come out, in 2022, when you couldn't get anything, if you wanted to buy one of those Mitsubishi Warriors, or you wanted to buy that Volvo XC40, you wanted to buy a Fiesta, you wanted to buy a Tesla, anything, you had to basically pay overs. You bought a brand new cooking Focus and your dealer would offer you $3 more for it 3 months later. You couldn't get a hold of a single car for a reasonable price. This was peak car price madness, and Toyota clearly had a bunch of Supras lying around, and so they started doing these really, really good finance deals. And I remember seeing them and thinking, crikey, a Supra for like 500 odd quid a month. I mean, I would. Unfortunately, at the time I just wasn't in the position to do it, but I was tempted. Ian was tempted, and he took a real leap of faith, because when he spoke to his dealer, they didn't have one in that he could even look at, let alone drive. So he had to order it and hope that he liked it. 2 years down the line, he does not regret his decision one bit. And you know what? I think he's pulled a blinder. Now, anybody that asks me and says, James, which Supra should I buy? Of course, I'm going to tell you, get the 3 litre. Because they do only cost a little bit more than the 2. But if you are doing that many miles, or if you're just not that fussed about having the big engine, the 2 litre does its job very, very well indeed. And today you can pick one of these up for £33,000. And because it is a Toyota, it's still going to have a lot of its 10-year warranty left. And I love the GR86. I really, really love the GR86. But that Supra badge, that does count for something. I like this car a lot. Anyway, I want to say a big thank you to Ian for bringing it out, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. Bye-bye.